Fight for religious freedom. The State Department begins its global gathering on how to protect the faithful. Xenophobic and bigoted. Democrats respond to the president's comments on Twitter regarding 4 female lawmakers. We're on Capitol Hill. Transparently beautiful. We hear about the new cathedral in the Diocese of Orange and its nearly 11,000 panes of glass. And out of this world. On the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission, Vice President Mike Pence pays tribute to the crew. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, July 16, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo promises America will not waver in standing up for religious freedom. He made opening remarks today at the second annual ministerial to advance religious freedom. He called for input from hundreds of attendees on how best to advance the cause.
All people from every place on the globe must be permitted to practice their faith openly in their homes, in their places of worship, in the public square, and believe what they want to believe.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressed more than 1,000 participants of this week's ministerial. Advocates described ways they're working to promote religious tolerance. Yamini Ravindran is a survivor of the Easter Sunday attacks on churches in Sri Lanka.
The Christian community has reached out to the Muslim community to prevent backlashes.
Rabbi Jeffrey Myers spoke of the 11 worshipers at his Tree of Life synagogue killed in the worst act of anti-Semitic violence in American history last October in Pittsburgh. Myers criticized news coverage after the attack.
I hold the media responsible for the psyche of all of us. Continued reporting on murder and mayhem must weigh heavily on so many.
And he urged everyone to consider the power of words.
I took a pledge 2 weeks after the massacre in my synagogue to not use the word hate, which I'll only use once. It's a 4-letter word in the English language, and is the case with all 4-letter words that are obscenities. You don't use it.
Farid Ahmed, a survivor of the March 15th terror attack on a mosque in New Zealand, echoed the words of the rabbi.
The hate destroys us. The one who has hate is like a volcano, a heart like a volcano. It is filled with hatred, rage, and fury.
The ministerial continues tomorrow. Participants will debate how to combat the rise of anti-Semitism and how governments can work together to promote freedom of religion. And church leaders from across the Middle East are in Washington for the gathering. Catholic, Orthodox, Armenian, Coptic, and Protestant are just a few of the Christian denominations represented at a prayer service and meeting on Capitol Hill last night. Organizers discussed how important it is to defend fellow Christian brothers and sisters in the Middle East, the birthplace of Christianity. The State Department's Special Advisor for Religious Minorities, Knox Thames, says ISIS forced hundreds of thousands of Christians to flee places like Iraq and Syria. Despite the challenges, he says he's still hopeful.
We've brought in survivors from 30 different countries to tell their stories about how they overcame immense persecution. So just seeing their personal strength gives me hope that we can, if we come together across national lines, political lines, religious lines, we can make a difference.
Organizing the service was In Defense of Christians, a group which advocates for the protection and preservation of Christians and Christianity in the Middle East. Democrats in the House of Representatives are coming together to condemn the president's tweets as racist. President Trump tweeted Sunday that Democratic women should go back to the places they came. The president continues to defend himself. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reports. Jason?
Why the House will be voting on this 4-page resolution. It condemns President Trump for what it calls racist comments. House Democrats have been, as of late, fighting amongst themselves between the left and more moderate members, but now they're all coming together to condemn President Trump's tweets.
It's my opinion they hate our country, and that's not good.
The president again criticizes these 4 Democrats. He tweeted Sunday they should go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. But they're all American citizens. Only Representative Ilhan Omar was born outside the United States in Somalia.
So it is time for us to stop allowing this president to make a mockery out of our Constitution. It's time for us to impeach this president.
The House won't go there yet, but in the resolution's words, strongly condemns President Donald Trump's racist comments that have legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color.
Our diversity is a strength, it is not a weakness, and we should speak in one voice to denounce the racist and xenophobic rhetoric.
Some Democrats wanted to go further with a symbolic formal censure. So rare, it was only done to one former president, Andrew Jackson.
Why not go all the way to censure today?
Well, I just don't think everybody is there, and I think that the most important thing is, again, that we quickly and strongly condemn the president's racist tweets, and that the Republicans join us in that.
House Republican leaders say it's politics.
I believe this is about ideology.
And the GOP tries to change the focus.
Our colleagues, our socialist colleagues on the other side of the aisle, are wrong when they advocate abortion up until the moment of birth, including partial term abortion, partial birth abortion, late term abortion.
The House Democratic resolution goes through the history of the United States welcoming immigrants. I do know that Senate Republicans did talk about the president's tweets during their lunch, which they met today. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says it's time for the temperature of the rhetoric to cool here in Washington. And Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, says he's going to try to force a vote to get the Senate to condemn President Trump's tweets. Wyatt?
And we'll be watching that bill carefully. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. Catholic leaders are voicing their concern with a new Trump administration policy that would slash the number of migrants who can apply for asylum in the United States. Legal groups are also weighing in, promising a court challenge. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. President Trump's asylum rule, set to launch today, would affect people looking for refuge in the U.S. If migrants pass through Mexico or any other country on their way here, they could become ineligible to seek protection in America. A new plan from President Trump would restrict asylum seekers coming to the U.S. from Central America.
Why would Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador, why would they keep their criminals when you can put them into the caravan, lose them in a caravan, and send them up to the United States? We take everybody.
With some exceptions, including those for victims of human trafficking, the president's asylum rule would deem migrants ineligible for asylum if they pass through another country on their way to the U.S. southern border, meaning many immigrants in Central American countries passing through Mexico would not be able to seek safe haven in the U.S. This Honduran migrant asked how she can remain in Mexico, where crime makes it dangerous for her girls. She says she fled Honduras for the same reasons. The president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, is responding to the new asylum rule, writing, "It is contrary to American and Christian values to attempt to prevent people from migrating here when they are fleeing to save their lives and to find safety for their families." The rule will undoubtedly face court challenges. The American Civil Liberties Union promises to sue the Trump administration.
This is the most extreme situation, saying anybody who has gone through any other country cannot apply for asylum.
But the Trump administration argues the U.S. southern border and border agents are overwhelmed with the flow of migrants, and without Congress passing greater immigration reform, the Trump administration is calling on Central American countries to do more.
We hope Guatemala will get serious about the safe third country. We'd like to process these asylum claims in those countries and south of our border. It will expedite those claims processing.
Attorney General William Barr says the U.S. is a generous country, but is being completely overwhelmed at the southern border. The Trump administration has withheld some aid money to Central American countries and threatened to hold even more unless they help reduce northward migration. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. Iran's supreme leader says his country will retaliate after British authorities seize one of their oil tankers. Ayatollah Khamenei called the taking of the ship piracy and added the Islamic Republic, quote, will not leave this evil without a response. The Iranian supertanker was seized earlier this month over fears it was headed to Syria. If it was, it would have been a violation of European sanctions on oil shipments to that country. North Korea is threatening to resume missile testing after a nearly 2-year suspension. The move comes as the U.S. and South Korea prepare for joint military drills this summer. Pyongyang says the exercises might be preparation for an eventual invasion. A woman in El Salvador accused of having an abortion, which is illegal in the country, now faces a retrial. Evelyn Beatriz Hernandez gave birth in an outhouse toilet where the baby died. She says she did not know she was pregnant, and if she did, she would have welcomed the baby. Supporters for the mother gathered outside a courthouse. She faces a new trial after the country's Supreme Court overturned her earlier conviction for murder. Bishops in Pakistan met with the country's prime minister earlier this month to express their concerns over the treatment of Christians. A Vatican news agency says the bishops also handed the prime minister a check of about $35,000 to help improve the country's water reserves. Leader Imran Khan praised the church for the good work it does in Pakistan. To shed light on the Catholic community in Pakistan, we're joined by Father Bonafice Mendes of the Diocese of Faisalabad. He's in Rome for meetings this week. Father, welcome into the broadcast. Tell me about the Catholic Church in Pakistan. What is life like for Catholics in your home country?
Pakistan has a very vibrant Catholic Church. It's not very often, people are talking of some cases, individual cases. They forget everything positive that is going on within the church. It's a very positive contribution to the country, to the field of education, to the field of health, and in every other field. The youth are very active. If you go to any church, you'll find it full. No matter where you go to in the country, the churches are full of people, and young people at that. Vocations are coming. People are very keen to contribute to the church, and therefore there are negative cases, like you have the blasphemy law, you have some other things, but that does not take away the fact that by and large, the people are contributing to the country and attend churches regularly. There are churches all over the country. In many, many parts of the city, there are churches and people going day and night. There's one thing about Pakistan, you can pray at any time. There may be discrimination at local level. It's the mindset of certain people against Christians, but that does not stop the common person from contributing to the nation.
Last year, Pope Francis named Archbishop Joseph Coots cardinal, one of 14 new cardinals. How is having a Pakistani cardinal helping the church?
Pakistan has got a very negative image in the minds of many people. And therefore, having a cardinal who can speak up and tell about the church, that is very important. Even any of us, when we get this opportunity of speaking about the church, it's important that what are we contributing to the nation? What are we doing in the country? How many people come to church? The churches are packed no matter what happens. And the government, mind you, gives us security. You had a very bad example on Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka. In contrast, in Pakistan, every church was protected, every church, no matter how big or small. And therefore, much appreciation should be given to the government, to the police, to the security departments that protect us at each step of our daily life.
Yesterday, you participated in a panel discussion with British Ambassador to the Holy See, Sally Axworthy, on the new report on Christian persecution. It says Christians are the most persecuted religious group in the world. What can the Pakistani government learn from this report?
I think the fact is that the government knows about it and is trying its level best. It is not the government, it's the mindset of the people. This has started in the 1980s, and there is a certain school of thought coming from Saudi Arabia or from abroad that has created this mindset against the church, against the Christians. And therefore, it is for the government now to help us to really give a positive message to the whole world, not only to the country, but also to the people abroad. We are trying, and the government also is trying.
A lot of insightful messages there and things to keep in mind. Father Bonafice Mendes of the Diocese of Faisalabad in Pakistan, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you. Always appreciate EWTN.
Coming up, Go for the Moon, a look at the Apollo 11 mission 50 years later. "50 years after the Apollo 11 launch, the Smithsonian unveils astronaut Neil Armstrong's refurbished spacesuit. Vice President Mike Pence paid tribute to the mission and to Armstrong, the first person to walk on the moon. He says the debt the U.S. owes the Apollo astronauts can never be fully repaid. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. As the second annual Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom gets underway here in Washington, faith leaders and government officials are meeting to discuss the ongoing problem of religious persecution around the globe. According to the U.S. State Department, 80% of people around the world live in a religiously restricted environment. We're joined by Episcopal Bishop Joseph DSouza of Good Shepherd Church of India. He's an advocate for the rights of Christians and other religious minorities. Welcome back to the broadcast.
Thank you, Wyatt.
You attended a presentation today at the State Department by survivors of recent attacks. We had featured them earlier in our newscast. What was the takeaway for you when you hear speeches from survivors?
The takeaway in today's world is that everybody is now vulnerable. A majority religion in one part of the world cannot think that they are safe because they are a minority in another part of the world. So you had the New Zealand mosque attack. And the Imam was great. I mean, talked about forgiveness. The survivors actually had a great spirit. The girl from Sri Lanka, the lady from Sri Lanka who talked about the bombing of the churches, again, there is trauma and there is shock and fear that it happened. And of course, the rabbi from Pittsburgh where the Jews were killed. And so the main takeaway also from the envoy from the EU religious department is that we are moving towards a very dangerous period. And we thought, we think about the Jewish Holocaust and we said never again. But he says, no, it's happening all over again. You had the genocide in the Middle East against Christians, and you have violence in the name of religion eroding. I mean, in India, we have had the Kashmiri Pandit Hindus who are the minority in Kashmir been driven out. So these are difficult days.
Absolutely. I want to ask you a little bit more about India in particular because I want to get an update on Christians because I understand there's some of them that are considered to be in society to be the untouchables. That's the lowest rung in the caste system. What's going on there?
It's a difficult time for them, mainly because there's a propaganda going on that somehow Christians are engaged in forced and fraudulent conversion. That's a lie. And that all of the humanitarian work that Christian groups do, the churches, the Catholic schools, all of that has got some kind of a conversion agenda. It's further from the truth. On the other hand, people are encountering Jesus freely, with a divine encounter. But the laws that have been created, so-called freedom of religion laws, which are actually anti-conversion laws, prevents people freely to change. And the article in the UN on religious freedom, or even in our Constitution, you have the freedom to believe or not believe, choose or not choose, etc. So those laws end up becoming an harassment. And of course, what has happened over a decade or so is the attack on Christians from that kind of background has increased. And unfortunately, groups like Open Door and others are now saying India is the 10th most persecuted nation in the world. I never thought we would come so high on the list in my experience. Even though I've been advocating, I never thought, oh my, things would deteriorate so bad and people would take, to resort to violence, and where Christians are vulnerable, they would attack. And I think all over the world, Christians are the largest persecuted group now in the world.
Yes, and they continue to be. So, like I said, it's so important for your advocacy work and so many other Christian groups who continue to bring this to the forefront at the State Department this week. And I know you've been busy, so we appreciate your stopping by and talking about it. Episcopal Bishop Joseph DSouza of Good Shepherd Church of India, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Matt.
Up next, a preview of the new cathedral in California, and a Catholic priest in Kentucky helps some out-of-work coal miners. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. The Diocese of Orange in Southern California prepares for the grand opening of its new Christ Cathedral. The Evangelical Protestant Church, previously known as Crystal Cathedral, was purchased by the diocese in 2011 and has undergone extensive renovation to make it ready for Catholic worship. Joining me now by satellite from Orange, California is Bishop Timothy Freyer, Auxiliary Bishop of the Diocese of Orange. Your Excellency, welcome into the broadcast. You were ordained a priest in the Diocese of Orange in 1989. What is it like for you to see this remarkable transformation of the church's newest cathedral?
Thank you for having me. It's been an amazing journey to be able to watch the transformation of the cathedral. And for me, what it really shows is the sign of our growth here in the Diocese of Orange, that as many parishes are clustering or closing, here we continue to grow. It's not just Christ Cathedral that is renovated and is expanding, but we have other parishes that just were dedicated. We've got parishes that are planning to build larger spaces, larger churches. So to me, it's just a sign of vitality and the blessing that God's given to us, that we continue to grow and more people are coming into the faith. So it's a great gift to be able to watch and be part of such a wonderful community of faith here.
How do you envision Christ Cathedral with supporting the faithful, not just across the diocese, but across Orange County in general?
One of the things I think that we've been intentional about doing is making sure that Christ Cathedral is a place for all people from not just Orange County, but even throughout the world to come and have in the presence of Christ, to experience His goodness. We have a number of events that are multi-faith that we've already been having on campus. One of them, for example, on December 21st, the longest night, we have an interreligious prayer service for all the homeless that died in the streets in our county in the last year. And many of the religious leaders said that because we have it here on our campus, it helps to bring greater awareness. We get more publicity and helps us to try to make sure that people won't be dying on the streets in Orange County in the future. Those types of events help to make sure that this is a place for all people. We have tourists coming from all over the world, and we're trying to make sure that if they come from Asia or Europe or South America or Texas or Washington, D.C., that they would have an experience through the goodness of God, through the beauty, through the truth, that they would have an experience of Christ as well. So we want to make sure that we utilize this opportunity to bring people to Christ, to evangelize as many people as possible.
And in that same kind of line of thinking, there's a Cathedral Memorial Garden Cemetery, which is on the campus just in the shadow of the cathedral. It's available to both Catholics and non-Catholics alike. Why is that so important?
The Cathedral Memorial Gardens is an ecumenical cemetery, in part because of its history. This was Dr. Schuller's cemetery, and so most of the people that had been buried there during the first years were not Catholic. And now we have a number of Catholics that have been wanting to be buried here close to Christ Cathedral. But it reminds us that whether we're Catholic or Christian, we all die in faith of the resurrection of Jesus Christ when He comes again in glory and will raise our bodies from the tombs. And so our brothers and sisters, Catholic, non-Catholic, that share our faith in Jesus Christ, long for the day of the Lord's return when we'll be with Him in paradise.
Such an important religious message, and like I say, one you're sending out to all people all around the world. Bishop Timothy Freyer, Auxiliary Bishop of the Diocese of Orange, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
EWTN will air the dedication live tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. A special preview show will air just before that at 1 p.m. Visit EWTN.com for more programming schedule. Finally tonight, around 100 out-of-work coal miners crammed inside a Catholic church in Kentucky. A Catholic priest offered prayers and something else. Father Jim Sitchko gave $20,000 to help the workers pay their bills. Earlier this month, their company filed for bankruptcy. There are allegations Black Jewel LLC took back money it had paid the employees before the bankruptcy declaration. The company denies those charges. Father Sitchko felt compelled to help. The diocese in Lexington says he raised the money on his own. Pretty incredible how he continues to advocate for the coal workers and their families. And that wraps up our newscast for tonight. We thank you for watching. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.